Recording? Yeah. Great. Well, welcome everyone to the March 7th, 2024 our County Planning Board meeting. We have several quorum items for us today. 3 CIP votes, the CIP presentation. We'll call the roll first. Bill Santos here, Mike Wiedemer here, Sam Trapani, Andrew Hollister, Orlando Rivera here, Dave Watson here, Robert Bartley, Andre Evans, Legislator Barnhart, Jeff McCann, Adrian Green, Amy Grower, Laura Smith, Robert Franklin, here. Josette Mangieri, here. Richard Tantalo here, Christina Doherty, here. Mike Garland, and Sean Murphy here. Anyone I didn't call? Ishan, you want to announce staff?
So planning staff present today, we have our director analyst here and our senior associate planner, Pat Gooch. He's here today going to present the proposed CIP. Yes. And we also have a guest, Mike Wolf from the aviation department to present amendment item. And we also have a public participant, Scott Mackay.
Yes, welcome. All right, great. Thank you.
And there's no Zoom participate at this moment.
Okay, great, thank you. So first item on the agenda is the election of chair and vice chair. So I just want to remind the board that only citizen board members can nominate and vote for chair and vice chair. Citizen members are those positions appointed by the county exec, those four. The legislature, those 3, and the EMC, which is 1. So I'll open up and ask for nominations for chair at the moment.
Happy to nominate Bill Santos as chair.
Second. Okay, thank you. Mike. And David. Is anyone else interested in chair? Don't be shy. Take it. No hard feelings. Well, hearing none, then I'll ask for a motion to close the nominations and nominate Bill Santos for chair. Need a motion for that. David? Second. Thank you, Orlando. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Great.
Congratulations, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Honestly, the group is great. So, the next item is call for nominations for vice chair. I'd like to nominate Mike Wiedemer. If Mike's still interested.
Interested? Yes.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Orlando. Great, thank you. Mike. Any other nominations for vice chair? Anyone interested in vice chair? Don't be shy. Okay, hearing none, I'd like to motion to close nominations for vice chair and also make a motion to accept Mike Wiedemer as vice chair for the year of 2024. Motion for that, please.
So moved.
David. Is there a second? Second for that? Thank you, Orlando. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you. Congratulations, Mike. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the November 16th, 2023 meeting minutes. I need a motion for those, please. Thank you, Sean.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any discussion on those?
Just a typo on page 2 to your name, Mr. Chairman.
We can fix that. Modify. That's all right. Page 2. Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? There being none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, minutes are approved. Thank you. Announcements and communications. Any board members with announcements? Any staff announcements? If not, we'll move on. Action item A, 4A, is to amend the 2024 through 2029 capital improvement program and the 2024 capital budget to add a project entitled Rochester Pure Water District Frankie Van Laer Wastewater Treatment Plant Electrical System Improvement in the amount of $16,852,504 for a total project authorization of $37,852,504. Is there a motion for that, please? Need a motion for that.
So moved.
Thank you, David. And I need a second for that.
Second.
Thank you. I heard Richard. Richard, did you raise your hand?
I did.
Thank you. Great. And we have a presentation. Is that Sean?
It's me.
All right.
All right, good deal. So on these, I normally put the letter to the board asking for authorization on the second page here. And you'll see the difference between the 16 million and 37 million is because this project was actually in the 2019 to 2024, whatever the CIP. So it's a previous project that has been built. This is kind of a second phase, if you will, for the activities. That first phase was $21 million that had previously been approved, has been spent, and we'll talk about that in a second. So the next slide shows you Van Laer. This is the site of the proposed work. It's particularly up where the circled area is. That's where the substation is located. The electrical supply for the plant comes in from the north through two separate sources from RG&E. And the plant treats wastewater from the vast majority of the county. The Rochester Pure Waters District, GCO Sewer District, ironically based South Central Pure Waters District, represents about 555,000 people. It's got a permitted average flow of 135 MGD, million gallons per day. But the peak flow is 660 million gallons, which is pretty significant if there's rainstorms or anything of that nature. And usually when you have problems with infrastructure and power and everything else, it's during the middle of a rainstorm, right? So when we have the peak flow, it's generally when we're most susceptible to having issues with the power. So on the next slide, you'll see what we're after. The existing substation, which is a circa 1970 substation, is aged out. It's over 50 years old. So the initial intent of the project was to replace that substation. And that's what was done with the $21 million already authorized. And that represents the building that was constructed on the right corner there. You see the new transformers outside. There's a bunch of switchgear on the inside, which will show up on a drawing here in a second. And then the lower left-hand corner, you see what it looks like now with the substation being gone. The substation is now formally enclosed in that new building. So with the intent of replacing the aging infrastructure and recognizing that we had a number of outages documented going back to at least 2012, we had 2 in 2012, 2 in 2016, 4 in 2020, another one in 2021, where the power goes out, instrumentation goes out. It's quite disruptive to the plant. It means the operations folks have to bring in a number of smaller generators to try to do that, but that takes those generators away from being able to service out into the system. So with that, we wanted to add the ability to have some resiliency and reliability into the project. And as a result, when this building was built, you can see on the left-hand side, those couple of louvers, there was space allocated for putting generators in the future. The future is upon us. So on the next slide, you can see on the right-hand side is the phase one. That's basically all the switch gear that accommodates the downstepping of power that comes in at 34.5 kilovolts, gets stepped down to 4160, distributed into the plant. So as part of that building on the left side, that area where the generators would go has already been constructed. That's what's sitting there. You saw those in the louvers. So in this second phase, we intend to put in 3 2.5 megawatt or 250,000 kW generators. And if you go to the next page, it's kind of pretty straightforward from a technology standpoint. 3 large diesel generators, right? They will get put into that section of the building. There's some new switch gear that has to be put in because these generators put power out at 4160. So it doesn't have to be stepped down from the transformer, but we have to put the associated switch gear in to allow that power to be taken from the generator into the existing switch gear and distributed into the plant. And some basic site improvements. The site improvements are basically putting a diesel tank outside to be able to accommodate the fuel. Now, the question does come up, why diesel versus natural gas, which is technically a cleaner burning fuel? There's a couple reasons for that. One is you get more power out of a generator using diesel than you do out of natural gas. So if we want natural gas generators, it'd actually be 3,000 kW generators, so they'd actually be larger. But then also, gas mains are susceptible to damage just like utilities are. So it's better to have the gas and the fuel on site so that we can operate the generators and then refuel as we need to with trucks on a as a needed basis. So that's pretty much the technical part. If you go to the next slide, this just shows you what our opinion of probable cost is. The 16,852, of which it's interesting to know we got a FEMA grant because again, resiliency is what we're after. So we got 90% of that cost will be covered by a FEMA grant. So that's $15,200,000 some odd $1,000, with the local share being about $1.6 million. And with that, there's time frames and other requirements that go into that. But we anticipated those FEMA, this federal thing when we were going with the original project. So that's all been built into the contract documents. This is going to be done through the PLA as part of the bigger project at Van Laer. So the PLA will be in place. And the grant's been executed. We're ready to go. We just need to have the funding in place so we can get started. That's it, pretty much. If you go to the next slide, that kind of prompts people for questions. Yeah.
Questions for Sean?
Question, size of the tanks for the diesel?
I don't know that we have that fully engineered right now, but they'll end up being, you know, probably a couple thousand gallons.
Will it be above ground or below?
I think they're going to be below ground. We're above floodplain because we're high enough up above the lake and all that from a floodplain standpoint. So I think they'll be below grade just because of the size and nature of them.
Thank you.
Along those lines, that question, what does that translate to in number of hours of backup? So I know that generators draw a certain fuel rate, right? So do you know if it's like going to be 2 days worth or?
I think that's part of what we have to come through in the design to actually
Yeah.
figure out exactly what that's going to end up being. But certainly we want to allow, we'll go back and look at the historical on the number of days that we had lost power.
Yeah.
And usually I think the power has been out no more than a couple days at most,
Okay.
you know, except for maybe like an ice storm situation.
Right.
But again, with the ability to bring fuel in with trucks, it's basically indefinitely fueled, right? When you think about it. So,
Right.
yeah.
If they're underground, they're probably going to need dual containment with all the.
Dual
alarms and
containment either
stuff.
way. Yeah. We'll
Right.
match all those
Oh, that's
environmental
true.
regulations that
Yeah.
are required. Yeah, above ground, you've heard of Convault is a brand name or whatever for fuel tanks, but again, something that large, sometimes it's just better off having it low grade.
Anything else? You looked at the natural gas side of it. Were there even generators available at that size?
They generally cut off at 2 megawatts.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that's
it'd
what I
almost
thought.
be a
Yeah.
custom build.
It was going to be an expensive unit, I suspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they start running 4 or 5 times more, then
Yeah.
The diesel.
And maintenance is cheaper on diesel than it is on gas generators from that standpoint.
Good. Any other questions? Well, we have. Yep, we already have a motion in a second. So hearing no other questions or comments, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, nice job. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep flushing your toilets.
There's one follow-up question. The size of that FEMA grant, how common is that for county projects?
90% is very, well, for FEMA, for
I
us.
was saying just the dollar.
Oh,
Is it
pretty
15?
pretty
15?
significant, yeah.
I mean, is that
A lot of other grants we get are in the $2 to $3 million range.
a FEMA grant that's been 10+ million?
Well, that'd probably be more public safety, I guess, if you guys would go Office of Emergency Management. Well,
Wow. That's
Okay.
great.
Thank
I
you.
think we were fortunate, both the percentage, but then also the total line, the dollar amount of it.
Great. So next item on the agenda is item 4B. And that's to amend the 2024 through 2029 capital improvement program and the 2024 capital budget to add a project entitled Airport Electrification and Carbon Emission Reduction Project at the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport in the amount of $1.6 million. I need a motion for that, please. Thank you, Mike. Is there a second? Thank you, Robert. And Mike, you're here from the airport.
Well,
Welcome.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Chairman, and congratulations on being appointed for chair for another year.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, board members, thank you again for having me to speak about this project. This is a project that we recently have received a grant to be able to look at our EV charging and our carbon emission reduction projects. One thing that we were looking at when we applied for this grant was, in part of the package is shuttle buses. So we're looking to look for electrifying our bus shuttles. This again was done in 2021. It's very conceptual at this time. We haven't chased out all the details, but this was mainly what we had thought of at the time to be able to apply for the grant that we were recently awarded. So before you today is the action to add the project to the capital improvement. Before the legislative body will be the request to be able to accept the grant. Part of the grant amount will be looking at finalizing the design for the bus and the charging station. And to look at the demands and needs of a study, if you will, for other areas around the airport where we could do carbon footprint reductions. That's pretty much it right now. It's basically just receiving the grant money to be able to let the airport move ahead with looking at plans like this for carbon reduction. Are there any questions?
I have one. My understanding is this is an addition to your shuttle fleet, not a replacement of your shuttle fleet.
That's correct. Yes, in addition, yes.
What's the size
Yeah.
now versus what?
It would be a similar size, about 14 to 15 passengers. We're not looking at like a school bus size at all. It's the mini buses that we have on the airport property.
And I'm sorry, I may have missed it. How many do you have now that are gas versus?
Oh, they're all gas right now. So they're, I should have that in front of me, but I can get the exact number, but we have probably 8 to 10.
Yeah, ballpark is fine. So 8 to 10, we're adding, so we're starting.
Yes.
And then
Adding one, right?
Yes.
adding the one, and then you're planning on just adding those as you go, or as
That's
the other?
correct. Yes, as the program progresses, it's something that we're looking to expand on, and that's why we're showing 2 locations here.
Yeah,
Again, this is kind of, these aren't, for our freight building road, it's controlled by gates. So
Yeah.
it's not accessible for the public. It's just something where we're able to park away from the airport property and to have our charging stations for the buses.
okay, so, and then those charging stations, are they like a level 3 fast charger.
That's one thing that we'll be looking at with the study and what we can get there for the type of charging we can have out there. A lot of depends on the availability of electric from RG&E.
Yeah.
So that's something else that part of the study we'll do too, is make sure that we have the appropriate amount of electric coming to the property
Sure.
for current demands and also future needs
Right.
for things like this.
Okay. Gotcha. Right. Any other questions?
Current EV use at the airport, what percent would you say?
We're increasing the percent. I don't have the exact number for you, but I can tell you that we have added probably 8 chargers to our yellow lot for passengers to be able to charge. In the parking garages themselves, we have another 6 or 7 chargers that passengers are able to use. And in addition to that, each of the car companies are adding their own fleet of chargings to the garage themselves. Now, those are mainly for the charging of the rental cars. But we are always looking at ways to increase our EV capability and to have more availability for our passengers.
I was really asking more about the current vehicles that are county owned at the airport that are electric.
I'm not aware of any.
The inaugural one. This is it.
The person, right?
Okay.
What, and you probably you wouldn't know the answer but does anyone have a feel for how much capacity is left at, if I recall, I designed it with 2 electrical services coming in, one on the
That's
east
correct.
and the west.
East and west side, yes.
So do you know what capacity you have on both?
Not off the top, no, I don't, but I can get that information for you.
Yeah, no, I just was wondering how much room we have to expand on
Right.
that electrical side. I just, not important, just a question. I'm sure it'll come up, you know.
Question.
Absolutely, we'll have that answer.
Robert, welcome.
Yeah, sorry about being late. When do you anticipate having this vehicle, the bus?
Pardon me?
Are they gonna buy a bus?
Yes, we're looking at a bus
And when they anticipate having it?
that's one thing we're looking at. I know there is a lead time when we do purchase a bus. So it could be as much as a year out from the purchase order. A lot depends on what we find in our study and what the availability is at the time.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Great, motion is approved. Robert, you joined during that presentation, right?
I joined you right before this one started, you guys. Yep.
Did you vote on the previous one?
No, I did
no?
not.
Okay, all right, good. So there. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 4C is to amend the 2024 through 2029 capital improvement program and the 2024 capital budget to add a project entitled Acquire, Replace, Rescue Firefighting Safety Vehicle R3 at the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport in the amount of $1.5 million. I need a motion for that, please.
Move it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Richard. And are you back on, Mike?
I'm back
Okay.
on. Thank you again, Chairman. So yes, this is quite frequently, well, our vehicles, our firefighting vehicles, they have a 15-year service life to them. This vehicle, R3, is 18 years old. We do a very good job of maintaining them, but as this one progressed in age, it's something that we're looking to replace this vehicle. We have probably about $106,000 in repair costs over the years from 18 to 23. So we've made the best of it we can, and what we're looking to do is get a federal grant to replace R3. Now R3 is a striker. You're able to scroll 1 or 2 pages. There's a picture of what the current, there's the current truck right now. So really the replacement truck will be a very similar size with the equipment mounted as you see there. Everything is required by the FAA. The only difference will be the color will be the new, it's like a lime yellow color, the high visibility yellow that we have to used for our vehicles out there. So once again, this is an 18-year-old truck that we're replacing. This truck won't go away. We're actually going to have this at public safety training facilities. So the new firefighters will be able to train on the truck, and it'll go into training mode. Whereas we'll have this new R3 come into the fleet index for our airport.
Is there a truck over at the training facility now?
Yes, there are a couple trucks over there.
And then you're gonna
Yes.
get rid of one. because
Rotate them out, yes.
Yeah.
But that helps us too, because having a truck that was part of the fleet index,
Yep.
that helps the airport too. That gives us flexibility that if a truck does go down for
Mhm.
any reason at all, that it would be a lengthy repair, we could bring that truck temporarily back in service to maintain our firefighting index
Right,
for the airport.
okay, great. Any questions for Mike?
The current, vehicle, you said is 18 years old.
Yes, it is.
How many miles or how many hours have you
Uh,
computed that it
I
has?
don't have the information for you, but I can get that.
I'm just curious,
I can get that from the chief.
and if that's, about average for that size vehicle, that type.
Let me, I don't want to speak out of turn. I can get that for you from the chief to have a,
Just put it in the minutes or
Sure.
share with the
absolutely.
chair.
Good question, any other questions?
One more,
Yep.
I can't remember, the last replacement vehicle, I don't think went to the public safety training facility. I think it was sold to like a Caribbean nation. Is that?
Those, yes, so what happened was we got, and that was before my time at the CIP, but what I recall is that rotating out the trucks at the old public safety training facility, I think that the oldest model was sold. And it was just replaced with the newer models that we have in there.
Good. And if I recall, you expanded over at public safety training, right?
Yes.
And so we're gonna be at maximum size, right? We're
Yes.
filling bays, we're pulling a
Yes.
truck out and refilling it, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
And the public safety training facility, that it's actually a great complex. I think the next nearest one of that caliber is actually in California. So
Oh.
Monroe County, it's really one of the gems of the county for first responders training. It's either here or California. So I know we do get a lot of people from throughout the nation.
oh. That's awesome.
You may recall in the meeting minutes, the PSTF, we did the additional bay, right? So I'm sure we would
Right.
accommodate this truck to go in that bay
Absolutely.
if that was
Yes.
the case.
Right,
But the current trucks that are going, seem to get longer and wider and they
yeah,
That's
really don't
correct.
squeeze in there
Yes.
very easily. So
right,
we'll accommodate that if that's the case.
nice.
Yep.
Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Any abstentions? Great, motion passes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Nice job. Next item is item 5A. Introduction of proposed 2025 through 2030 capital improvement program. And here to do that is welcome Pat Gooch.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As you know, we're in the process of the CIP, and Ishan's bringing up the presentation now. But every year we go through a similar process, changes of course throughout, but this year is very similar to the past years. We are at the point where we present a proposed CIP to this body. This body reviews that over a busy month of March, and then ideally considers and approves and recommends to the county legislature. That is our hope, and there we go. So if we can move on to the next slide, I can give you just some dates. So your schedule for the following month of March is, of course, today. If you've been fooled by the nice weather, it is in fact early March. And so next week, March 14th, we will hold ideally a public hearing, and we will have presentations from the departments that we select today after hearing about the CIP. And then on March 21st, we could have further department presentations if needed. Ideally, the board will vote on the CIP, and then also you will prioritize the budget year. And I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of this and at the next meeting. And then for most of you, you're familiar with the schedule. From that point on, this body hands it off to the legislature, and then the legislature runs with it from that point and conducts a 4-month process until adoption in August. And I can do the slides, I believe. So let's see, there we go. much easier for all of us. As you can see, this is similar to years in the past. Blue are the adopted CIP from the prior years. Red are the preliminary or proposed CIP. The shaded bars, same type of version, but the totals at the end. And then any sort of revised funding numbers are highlighted in red and green. Red if funding decreased, or green numbers indicate that the funding has increased compared to the prior 6-year cycle. And then some red arrows on there. There's not a lot on this slot on these slides, but they indicate when projects have moved back and forth. And then italicized projects are new, and they are added to the end for a brief description as well. So I know this is far too small to see, but you can see some of these details in the copy of the CIP that follows along with this presentation. So you'll see there on the far left column, we have the total CIP values. If you're curious, feel free to turn to page 6 and 7, where you can follow along with the totals. Program totals are on the bottom right-hand side. There you'll see the breakdown for the 6-year cycle. The total proposed CIP for the 2025-2030 year is $587,860,000. And that is higher than years past, but there's a lot of reasons for that, and we'll go into that. The percent change is about 35% from the last 6-year cycle. And then there's some breakdown on the individual funding sources. But for the sake of time, I can skip over those and we can go back to them if needed. Unfortunately, this is a long presentation, and I'm sure you guys have something to do. Okay, so you can't really see this because of the bar at the top, but this is the total funds adopted CIP versus proposed CIP. Once again, blue is the prior, whoops. Blue is the prior, red is the higher version or the proposed. So a couple things to draw out. 2025, it's about $20 million higher. 2026, $30 million. 2027, $43 million. 2028, about $4.6 million. 2029, $10 million. And then 2030 is new, so that of course didn't exist in the prior cycle, but that's about $104 million. This is the funding source for the 6-year program. You'll see here, and it's a little hard to read, but the county cash or the county debt is 33%. County cash operating cash is 14%. District or special charges, so things like pure waters, are 29%. District cash, 5%. Enterprise fees, enterprise cash, so places like the airport and MCH add up to really less than 1% on there. And then private, there's a small amount of private funding. It's less than 0.01%. And then federal or and state funding adds up to about 12%.
Can you remind us how 47% for the county share compares to the past couple of years?
47% for the county share. So the count, it's actually in line, and I do have, give me 1 second to grab the right sheet of paper here somewhere. There it is.
By the way, Pat, my screens look great. I can see everything.
It is a good presentation to be at home for. So
Yeah, it worked.
the county share is about 221 million over the course of about 18 years, and we're at 275 million. So in terms of percentage, I don't have that for you, but in terms of dollar value, that's where it is. So this is a similar chart, and what this does is break it down year by year and then give you the 2024, 2029 breakdown. And what you can see on this sheet is the changes from prior years. So the percent change from prior years, at least to go directly to last year and this year for your question, Mike, the county share is a 34% increase from prior year for the county. And then overall, it is about a 25% increase on the county cash, county debt, and county city funding.
And that's the 6 years of this CIP versus the 6 years of last CIP?
Exactly. So really only 1 year difference with changes throughout those 6-year cycles. So this is a further breakdown of the total funding source by 6-year CIP program. So this is 2020, 2025, all the way to our 2025, 2030. So you can kind of see the difference about how the funding breaks out visually. On the far right-hand side, that is the proposed volume. So up at the top there is the private funding and state and federal funding. So those are the monies that are coming in either through grants or a donation for specific projects. Then in the green is enterprise or enterprise cash. And then red or magenta is district and district cash. And then blue at the bottom is county and county cash. And so this, going to your question, Mike, again, you can kind of see the difference there along the bottom as it fluctuates.
Yeah.
So moving to federal funds. So these are departments, and I'll read off the title. Aviation, DOT, highway and bridges, and traffic engineering are our primary sources of federal funds. So this chart, it's a little hard to see, but the biggest difference here is that in 2025, DOT has received about $12 million in federal funds for road programs. So that's a significant amount that we actually weren't anticipating at the beginning of this process, but the DOT was notified of that funding throughout, which has helped us change some of the numbers around, which is good. Their total program hasn't changed drastically. It's actually been reduced by a little less than $1 million. So they're keeping it kind of flat with a slight reduction over the 6-year program. Ishan, can you advance? Thank you. So state funds, the next slide is state funds. So these are dollars that we receive for MCC, for the airport, for some other areas in terms of facilities, DOT, highways and bridges, traffic engineering, and then the sheriff. And so this has also gone down over the 6-year program. It's a reduction of approximately $8 million from 33.7 million to 25.2 million. One thing to note about both the federal funds and state funds, we don't know about the grants that are going to be coming in the future. So we do a very conservative approach to those with finance in the departments. So those numbers are likely to change over time. And one of the reasons why we see that change in the federal funds of DOT, we weren't aware that that was coming in until it came in. And so we have to operate with a conservative approach. And then when it comes in, we adjust the numbers to make sure that we can balance out and potentially pull county dollars from the CIP if possible. So this next slide is the enterprise funds. So these are MCH, aviation, solid waste. So essentially departments or divisions within Monroe County that have a user base that pay for their fees. And so this has a increase from 31.5 million to 36.6 million over the 6-year cycle. So it's a little over 5 million. And there's some change throughout the years. Each of the years have gone up. One thing I will highlight to everyone as well, we're all aware of inflation changing projects and changing the cost of things. Most of the increase that we see is in result of departments checking their numbers a little more thoroughly in the last couple of years, identifying that what we all predicted inflation to be is different than it is today. And so they have adjusted their numbers more robustly in this version of the CIP. So district funds, this is coming up, Pure Waters. So this actually accounts for a pretty large increase to the CIP and something that this board may want to consider for a conversation at the following meeting. But Pure Waters is entertaining a project that is potentially going to increase their CIP total by nearly $100 million. Those are district funds, so they're slightly different in terms of where that money is coming from, but it is still a significant increase to the CIP that we do have to take into factor into this program. Total county funds. So this is going back to your question again, Mike. So this is over the 6-year program that has changed from 220.8 million to 276.8 million. So an increase of about just $56 million. So that includes pretty much all the departments that I did not mention previously. This year we have Board of Elections and Clerk, which were not in our previous CIP cycles. They pop in and out as they have projects, and they have projects this year and in coming years. It includes Information Services, the Medical Examiner's Office, MCC to some degree, Library, Facilities, Parks, Zoo, Highways and Bridges, Transportation Engineering of DOT, Public Safety, and the Sheriff's Office. And so this is the total county funds by department adopted versus proposed. So this just kind of shows you the change for each of the departments in that 6-year cycle. So any change between the, or any space between that blue and the red is the difference. Some departments are very static, highways and bridges being one of them, very close there. A lot of departments are pretty static, actually, if you see how close they are, with kind of the outliers being pure waters, facilities, and then MCC. But MCC is actually dropped, and that is because the ATC or STEM project has dropped off the CIP from last year. This board advanced that project. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but that's about a $12 to $18 million, if I recall, that is no longer in this cycle, and they've advanced that project and moved it forward. So now we're going to get into the department slides, and I will move as quickly as I can, but we'll stop at anyone. If anyone has questions, please don't hesitate to jump in and ask. So as I mentioned, County Clerk is in this year's CIP. They have a records digitization project, which is new for 2025. They are looking to reduce the space that they need to store some of their records and turn some of them into electronic records. And the reason for that is twofold. One, it's space savings, but two, also some of those records are quite old, and the more they handle them, the less well off they are. So they're looking to preserve those and more easily search those records through an electronic means. They have a proposal to do so. They anticipate that they can complete the whole project in 2025. DES is aware of that project and working with them on some space limitations and changes related to that project as well. Information services.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
On the county clerk, what kind of information is that?
It's always grants and deeds and things like that.
Gotcha.
So basic records of the county clerk's office.
Okay.
And do you have any more information on that, Sean, in terms of, but that's my understanding of what it is, some very old records that they, for title searches and things like that, that they want to stop.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that's, I didn't know, but that's $353,000. So
Yep.
it's relatively small, but a big project for the clerk's office.
Sure.
Moving to information services. So one thing I want to note, the far right-hand side of all these department slides is the total. They are working on the scale of the other 6-year period. So that scale is slightly off because that's actually only a $1 million difference. But as you can see, those bars look drastically different. So just note that that the difference on the end is not as dramatic as it may appear.
Right.
But information services, they have like I said, their project has actually been reduced over the 6-year program from 21.6 million to 20.16 million. One note that, and you'll see here, is that in 2025, they have increased to 4.65 million. That is related to some ERP software system replacement that is currently underway and I'm planning to move forward in 2025. Moving to Board of Elections, as I mentioned, they jump in and out as they have projects. They have a project on the books for 2025, 2026. This is called voting equipment replacement. So as you know, the way we voted has changed over years. Now that it is mostly electronic, there are a need to update that equipment on a regular basis. Generally, I believe they say it's about a 10-year cycle. And so they are undertaking a process in 2025, 2026 to enhance the security of our voting and moving to a new electronic poll book system. And then they are looking for a specific vendor, but and working on that. But this is a overall $4 million project over 2 years, 2025, 2026.
And they've been in recently, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, they were in
started with
2 years
phase,
ago.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And so they,
So
as
this
I
is the
mentioned,
continuation of that.
yeah, it's slightly different, but they have to keep updating certain systems, and some systems are different than others.
Okay.
There's a computer system that they worry about, and then there's actual voting equipment that you see in the spaces, which is what the previous project was for to some degree.
Okay.
So health department medical examiner, this is often an area that stays pretty static, and for the most part is with one change, and that is really just that they've introduced a 2030 project. And as you're probably familiar, they entertain toxicology lab equipment and other equipment there. They have a cycle where they're constantly trying to replace that to stay ahead of the curve and to make sure that they can provide the best resources for Monroe County. So every 2 years, they spend approximately $300,000 to $500,000 on equipment, and they slot in whatever equipment is necessary at that time. And so they don't know specifically what 2030 will be, but they know that they'll be trying to replace something. By the time we get to the actual budget year, they will have identified equipment as they move forward. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
So, they had a backlog issue several years ago. Do they still have that problem? Or are they not reporting that?
I don't know the answer to
No,
that.
that has come up at legislator meetings. Toxicology is not the reason for any medical examiner delays these days.
Okay, but there are other issues or?
There are always issues.
Okay.
Toxicology is not the predominant issue these
Okay.
days.
Is it too sensitive to say what the issues are? Or? Is it
I don't want to speak out of
equipment-related?
turn because I might say something wrong.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So Monroe Community College, as I mentioned, we have a large project that is falling out of the CIP cycle. So you'll see on the far left there, that large blue bar, that's 23.5 million for the ATC STEM, which is the moving of the old facility on East Henrietta Road to the Brighton campus, and then integrating new systems into that as well. That is something that was moved ahead, I believe, in 2023, 2024. So their overall CIP is actually reduced in the 6-year cycle from 57.61 million to 40.89 million. And you'll see there that their cycle is actually pretty static, which is a change in at least my recent time with MCC. But based on conversations we've had with them, they're happy with what's going on. I'm sure there'll be some new trend that we have to address in the future, but as of right now, things are working pretty smooth. So Monroe Community Hospital. So Monroe Community Hospital is a department that has a bit of fluctuation here. You'll see that the total 6-year cycle is $2 million higher than previous years. We worked closely with them on their proposal this year. The work that they're doing, there's a lot of different need. They have, of course, facilities that they need to maintain, and so some things break down quicker than others. And so they explored some options and actually were able to reduce this original ask. Specifically, there's a new project, roadway lot repaving, which they originally thought was going to be closer to $2 million. But luckily they got a initial kind of superficial analysis that they believe they can do the work for just under $1 million at $750,000. So that will buy them the life they need for the roadways without spending as much money. So they're happy about that. And they have some other projects going on. Friendship Place specifically is a project that they're working on. They have grant money for that, but the cost of that project has escalated a little bit. So they're changing it slightly and increasing the funding to make sure they can complete that and follow the terms of the grant. Because of course, as a residential care facility, some of what they do is regulated by New York State. So they need to, in order to spend that money with the grant, they need to make sure they do at least the bare minimum of what they said. But they proposed that grant, I believe, in 2019 or earlier. And so inflation has changed a bit of that project. But they still believe that they will be able to complete that project and meet the needs of their residents and satisfy New York State. So moving on to library services, relatively static. You'll see 2 bumps there, and that is related to fleet maintenance. So the libraries, for those of you who, I would imagine most of you are aware that the Monroe County Libraries, you can return a book to any library and it'll get back to the original library you took it out at. They of course have to move those books around physically, and so they're able to do that by having a fleet of vans and trucks to do that. And so every now and then they need to replace that. That's what 2027 and 2028 is. They shifted the dollars from 2027 to 2028 to do that, just as they were identifying their spending pattern. Moving to aviation. So as you know, aviation is doing lots of interesting work over at the airport. They of course have one of the larger shares of the CIP. As we mentioned before, aviation is largely a self-funding operation with state, federal, and enterprise funds. And so that program, once again, the bars on the right-hand side is slightly out of scale, but it's an increase from 42.2 million to 43.6 million. So only about $1 million increase. As you can see, they've actually been able to save money in many years. or reduce, I should say, reduce their CIP ask over those years. And then, of course, they have a new project in 2030 for $9 million. So moving on to Pure Waters. So as I mentioned, Pure Waters also a district funding opportunity or enterprise, not enterprise, district funding. They have users who charge or get charged fees for their work. Oops. Yeah, there we go. And so they do have a significant increase, and that is related to the couple different improvements they need to make to their system. So one is they anticipate that they will be doing some work at the Frank E. Van Leer wastewater treatment plant. That work is related to permit upgrades through New York State. What exactly that entails, they're figuring out as we speak, and we'll know those specific terms. But they do anticipate that to be costly. And so the overall CIP ask for that project is, let's see, there it is, 2027. Is a 40 million, yeah.
48.
Thank you. 48 million. And they have scheduled 1 million and 8.6 million in the 2025-2026 for design and engineering, and then physical costs or construction costs in 2027. Those funds, once again, are district. So although it does factor into the county's borrowing power, it is not coming out of the county cash or county original taxpayers that we are familiar with, but it is still a significant raise in district funds.
What's their plan for the phase of that? The study is probably what, 2025, the 1 million, and then 8.6 for what, the design or something?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, we're still waiting for the permit. This is all driven by the Speedy's permit.
Gotcha.
So when the permit comes in and it gives us what the requirements are, then we'll go back and look. And I can assure you, we're not just gonna say, okay, this permit's great, let's go. We're gonna push back as hard as we can.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Is that something that you recommend they come in and do a presentation, or are they not at the point where they can do a presentation yet?
We're not ready yet because we haven't received the permit yet. We're still waiting.
Right.
We're basing some of our information on permits that other facilities have received.
Yeah.
But certainly Van Leer, as you know, is larger than most other facilities.
Right.
So it's not a linear relationship on what the requirements are going to drive in terms of our costs.
When do you expect the Speedies to be ready, and then an idea of what study? No?
Literally any day. I mean, we could
Yeah.
get something today, or it could be another couple months or whatever. We're driven totally by what the state's desire is.
Yeah.
You know, it's the catch-22. The more you push things out, the more they cost.
Right.
But
Right.
who wants to have the headache right now, right? So we're in no hurry to ask them to give us the permit.
What is the issue with the permit? Is it just too many, too much outflow?
I mean, Sean, go ahead.
Well, it's chemical like dechlorination. So we add chlorine, right, to disinfect.
Yeah.
Because it's going out to the lake, there's a
Right.
requirement for dechlorination, which is driven by tanks. Need tanks to do that, which is large construction,
Right.
large infrastructure.
Okay.
In essence, the way they're doing things just needs to be updated to a new modern standard. Not that it's not modern, but New York State, of course, is changing regulations.
Gotcha. So it's all strictly with the outflow. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, so DES facilities and engineering. So this program does have an increase as well. So over the 6-year program, this original 2024 to 2029 adopted CIP is about 31 million. The new schedule is 74.8 million. Several increases with the most significant in the new CIP year of 2030. So that's adding $21 million. So really the increases throughout are relatively are small in comparison. And so 2025, there's an increase of about 7 million. 2026 is they've moved 12 million there. And the following years, they have 1 million. 2028 is about 3 million. 2029 is relatively flat at 2 million. And let's see, is there anything else on that? No. So Let's move to DES solid waste. So
So,
solid, oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
Bill.
yeah, so facilities, most of it is just updates of our buildings or new code items, or just the buildings are getting older, or is that, what's the summary of?
A bit of both, I'll let Sean
Yeah.
speak.
So essentially, we do work with finance, right? As buildings get older and we
Right.
can defer maintenance as much as we can. We try to do that, but there are a couple of projects here. You'll see the
Mhm.
fleet electrical improvements.
Yeah.
It actually turns out that our electrical system at Fleet was from the original treatment plant, which is the 1960s.
Mhm.
We had an outage a couple years ago where they literally used the last known piece of equipment replaced at that site. So if it goes out now, we're like, totally SOL, we gotta go out and actually buy a new transformer. So we're creating the project to do it at a time.
Okay.
So a lot of this is being driven by age of infrastructure, reliability, and those types of activities.
Right,
And one thing I'll also note, DES, of course, is responsible for all the buildings in the county that other departments actually operate in.
right,
So you'll see there, public safety project, the county clerk's renovation.
Yep.
So these are led by not only building needs, but also user needs as well.
So for instance, on the clerk, Pat talked about the clerk has a project to digitize
Yeah.
records they need to keep. This project's actually to densify them more. So instead of having this whole room full of records, if we can get high density storage units, they can actually reduce their footprint. In
gotcha,
addition to what they can scan and throw away, the records they have to keep will make more densely
Right.
packed in and stored.
gotcha,
And then the only other thing to note there is the Westfall building reconstruction. That's much farther out, but that is a significant number as well. That building has some needs.
Yeah.
It's old and there's some issues there, so they are going to tackle that in the future, which is a new addition to the CIP. DES solid waste. So solid waste, relatively static over the 6-year program, 9.6 million to 10.95 million. Biggest change being in 2026. And that is related to moving a project from 2027 to 2026, which is the Northeast Quadrant Gloria Drive landfill improvements. So that is a facility that hasn't been in true operation. It's technically the old Penfield landfill, excuse me, that we are now responsible for as the county. And so it has been maintained and enclosed, but there are some further improvements that they're looking to do to make sure that it's safe for the coming future.
And the reason it got moved is 2.5 in 1 year, 2.5 in another year. It doesn't do us any good until the second 2.5 is available. So we wanted to move it all into a single year so we could actually undertake the project,
Mhm.
which is a cap. Again, it's regulatory and health and safety driven.
Mhm.
So Parks is pretty static. Their CIP has only changed by about $600 million over the 6-year cycle. As you know, the county executive has led the Parks Department on a modernization and improvement. That has happened over the last couple of years. They're not done with it, but some of that spending is kind of tailing off as they complete that initiative. There are some initiatives that they want to point to. The Grease Canal Park Master Plan improvements that have moved from 2025 to 2026. They have some drainage improvements at Durand Eastman Park. So there are some drainage issues there that at times make the facilities unusable. And so they're looking to address that. And some other minor things that they're looking for as they move forward.
So basically, they moved the Greece one because of the Durand.
In part, they're balancing out.
They're
but
trying
also
to
think
balance
They just
it
have
out.
some time to do that.
Right.
Did you
Parks.
mention Breeze Canal Park? What park was that?
Yeah, Grease Canal Park, sorry. Am I not speaking loud enough?
No,
I'm happy-
you are speaking just fine. My hearing's not great.
So Parks, Seneca Park Zoo, once again, a Parks Department, but a specialized division of the parks. You'll see there that there is a change in 2029 reduction from 2 million to 1 million. And that is moving out funding from 2029 to 2030 for tank rehabilitation. That is anticipated to happen. That is a programmatic safety net, so to speak, for that tank that is up there. They anticipate that they'll need maintenance in the future. And the overall funding for that program is only about $700,000 difference as well.
Okay.
70,000, excuse me. All right, so DOT highways and bridges. So I mentioned before that DOT has received about 12 million in federal funding in 2025. So that is part of the reason they have increased from 14.25 million to 21.21 million. And that is related to some bridge projects and some road repaving. It's bridge preventive maintenance and then some other changes as well. What else do we have in DOT that we should highlight for you? So they've moved some things around. They're replacing some vehicles. DOT has also noticed, much like DES, an increased cost in their operations in the funding due to inflation. Construction specifically has seen an increase in inflation that is higher than other areas. And so because of that, they've adjusted almost all of their CIP numbers to be in line with what they think is the new reality for at least the near future. And so that is something that you'll see a lot of green for that exact reason. It's not that the scope has changed. It's just that the dollars that we originally programmed in, unfortunately, just don't buy us as much as they used to. All right, DOT traffic engineering. So you'll see here there is a minor increase from 15.58 million to 16.80 million. So mostly, once again, related to overall cost increases. One change, they have increased the City of Rochester traffic features, increased that by $100,000 each year from 2025 until 2029, and then added a new 2030 portion of that. City of Rochester, as I'm sure you're aware, driving around this area, has engaged in significant road projects. The county traffic engineering division is the city's city traffic engineer. So they're responsible for work that goes on in the city of Rochester. And so that funding goes to that. And then public safety, we are nearing the end. So public safety has increased from 18.82 million to 27.72 million, with noticeable increases in 2026 and then minor increases in some of the other years. That 2026 year that we want to draw your attention to, so that is a increase of about $6 million, and that is specifically related to $5 million, excuse me, for communication site tower build. So as you know, the Public Safety Office is responsible for the operations of various communication systems for all the local departments, including fire, the county sheriff's office, local police departments, EMTs, and other entities. And we maintain a system that is redundant, and they need to further increase that redundancy. And so that's what this project is, because there's some gaps in the network that need to be addressed to ensure that they have the ability to have communications throughout Monroe County. So that is something that is scheduled for 2026, and it's a significant increase there. But other than that, we can go into some more information if we want on that one. And then,
Sorry,
oh, yeah,
that's mostly remote sites, remote towers.
yeah, so mostly tower builds and
I see Hamlin and
yep.
Webster.
Yep.
Okay. Is anything downtown?
not that I'm aware of.
So do we still have coverage issues downtown? I suspect we do, right? Usually with the buildings, right?
So we're 95%.
Oh, you're at 95%?
We're over 90%.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But to your point, Bill, I do know that the issue is with inside buildings, you know, when it's such a large parking space
Right.
that it's hard to get to.
Do you know how many, generally when they're designing a new place, they're required to, check in and see if a repeater's needed, right? So, do you know how many are starting to do that on these projects, new projects? Is everyone putting them in or, no, that's fine.
Certainly an expert on that.
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah,
You can certainly ask him. I can get back to you.
okay,
And
great.
if desired, we can ask them to come speak at the next presentation as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel for, is there something else that's needed? Something that, if an emergency staff needs to get in contact with somebody and they're not in a signal range, that could be a problem, right?
There is
So,
other things like a microwave backhaul that they're planning based on a federal engineering report that was completed. So
okay,
they're kind of picking and choosing which of those recommendations we can move forward with.
okay,
But there's all sorts of ideas within that.
all right,
And also, if you look back at facilities, there's a fiber optic master plan that's going along, and that's again to increase the reliability of the communication, not broadband, community broadband stuff, but
yeah,
municipal
right,
based.
municipal,
Yeah,
yeah.
make sure there's enough redundancy.
You got a
cell
backbone
towers, right?
between buildings, between towers,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
And actually, there's slightly related to that is you'll see at the top of the public safety table, public safety communications equipment and device replacement. So that has increased from 8.7 million to 11 million. That is to replace mobile units in vehicles, cell phones, those type of things. And they're specifically looking to go to devices that are compatible on multiple networks. So that way, if there is poor signal in one area, they can switch over to another network and have essentially a redundant system.
Nice.
So it's a lot of pieces that all operate together, but there's multiple ways to try to create that redundancy.
Okay, great.
I have a question for the 911. Are they having location finders for this new technology? I saw it in another town. I don't know if it was Ontario County or where when you call the 911, they can also locate where you are and also patch in the area to see what's going on for the emergency call. Is that being done with any of this funding?
I can't speak to that. I do know that your cell phone generally is required to allow your location to be provided during a 911 call. But I don't know any other details about how that works and how that's related to this project, if at all.
Okay, thanks.
So under the 911 phone system, there is a description that says automated location identifier,
That's what I'm thinking about. Okay,
ability to text and video message.
yes.
And is that what you're
I
thinking?
mean, I think that's what it is, to be quite honest.
Okay,
And I
Thanks,
also,
Bill.
I believe I'm speaking slightly out of turn, but my understanding that texting video is to enable more people to access the network. So if you cannot hear or speak, you'll have the ability to contact 911. And in a community like ours, where we have significant deaf population, that's something that is
oh, yeah,
being
Okay.
supported by public safety.
great.
Yes.
So the last department that we have on order is the Office of the Sheriff. So you'll see here that there is a slight increase, about $6 million, and that's really just minor increases throughout each of these yearly cycles. Increase in the first year is from 14 million to about 15.96 million. But throughout there, you'll see that the increases are generally in the $1 million range. Once again, slight focus on inflation, but also a slight focus on the Sheriff's Body Worn Camera Project. That is new funding throughout the 6-year cycle that they are starting off in 2025, and then will continue through this 6-year cycle at about $800,000 each year. With that, we have one last fun slide to present, and that is the estimated or projected debt service provided to us by the Finance Department. You'll see here on the bottom is gray. That is the projected debt service on existing debt. The blue with the horizontal bars or diagonal bars is the authorized but unissued debt. The red is the debt added by proposed 2025-2030 CIP projects. In other words, if this is approved as is, what potentially could happen to the county's debt service. And then lastly, is just kind of a trend line showing you where the total debt service is throughout those years. And I will defer to finance if they have anything else to say for that. Thank you.
Any, Bob, any concerns on the amount of debt we're incurring here? Or I don't want you to stick your neck out or anything. I mean, we have good rating, right? Credit rating.
Future debt service as required is just a function of an annual operating budget, and the concern is Once we incur the debt, we are obligated to pay it.
Yeah.
Legislature doesn't appropriate funding. I'm to take the property tax receipts as they come in and stash them away in a separate account until the debt service is scheduled for payment. So it becomes a budget flexibility issue. So
So with that, the last slide I have, let's see. Thank you. As I mentioned in the beginning, you have a busy month here for the CIP. You're used to this race here at the end, but I hope that, of course, you'll move forward with a public hearing for next week, March 14th. We should decide today which departments we believe we'd like to hear from to learn a little bit more about their CIP programs. We can do that March 14th and March 21st if desired, and potentially March 28th if needed, though that hasn't happened in a few years. And then March 21st, we hope that any presentations will be completed. You will consider and vote on this CIP, and we will also have the budget year priority vote done at that time as well. And just a quick reminder, I will send this board an email about the time of the next meeting with a ballot for the capital project priorities. Most of you are familiar with this, but this is for the 2025 year. So really what we're going to be spending our money, the county's money on next year. This can be done both digitally and physically. And so I'll be getting this out to you shortly. And if you have any questions on how to fill that out or anything, please don't hesitate to contact myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job. Any other questions for Pat? Next item would be to suggest what departments the board would like to hear from. I'll entertain some ideas.
I guess that would be my question for Pat. Which department do you recommend to hear from?
Well, to be fair, I've heard from all of them. So I think it's up to this board to what departments raise the most questions in their mind. There were some questions on public safety that maybe a further presentation would help. But I don't want to speak for the board, of course.
There was a big increase with facilities, but we kind of know what those are, I guess. But we've seen a bunch of those, so I don't know if anyone's interested in that or not. Sean's shaking his head.
It's not very interesting.
Right.
Pure Waters, who wants to talk about toilets? I mean, so there you go. Right there.
And they're not, yeah, and they're not ready to present anyway, so we don't know. So
Yeah, with
that's,
that, with the Pure Waters, it would be tough because
Yeah,
Sean's point,
exactly.
there's not a lot of detail there yet. I mean, they know they can speak in generalities, but there's not a lot of specifics.
Yeah.
But I would encourage you to explore from departments to learn a little bit more, if nothing else. They're here to educate you on what they're doing, and I think that makes better able to make decisions.
anything for Richard? Any ideas you want to hear from anybody or?
Just we're ready to go when we decide to do that. Is it the 14th for
Uh,
public safety?
Yes, that would be the next session, so.
While you're out of the room, there were some questions on coverage. And Christina relayed that we're over 95% coverage in the city area. So are there any other areas that you say, you know what, we really need to do this or really need to do that for infill and coverage, or is it?
Well, we still continue to evaluate that,
Right.
and they do testing to determine where we might fall below that average, but
Yeah.
it's minimal. And
Yeah.
continue to try and, national standard 95%. So
Okay.
we're there,
Okay,
and we continue to make sure that if we do have any, drop calls or problem areas, that we address those.
okay. So it doesn't sound like it's, we need a presentation or a need or something, an idea session from you.
We can update you this way. If you hear those questions, sometimes the misinformation gets circulated more than the actual information. So I just assume, get that cleared up and make sure everybody is, has a
Well, you
clear
do have the
understanding.
tower project, right? So is that something, do you have enough information to make a presentation on that now, or not
I
yet?
can give you an update in regards
Oh,
to
you-
that, yeah, absolutely. So,
Oh, okay. Are the board members, would they like to hear about the tower project or an update from it? I'm seeing yes.
Sure.
Okay,
so I'll make sure that team is here on the 14th in particular.
okay,
from
great.
Public Safety.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And we're also here from 911
911.
communications, yeah.
You group?
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be part, I can have that same team here in regards to the 911 emergency operations. I'm not the emergency communications department.
Yeah,
So Robert's question was, he saw in another county, they were able to have live video streaming, correct?
Right,
yeah, location indicators and live streaming for those that are calling in for emergencies.
Right. Is that something that they'd be willing to or ready to talk to or talk about?
well, I think globally we can speak to that concept.
Okay,
Certainly it's a relatively new
yeah,
process. We're also comparing a emergency communications center that handles 1 million calls a year,
Right.
what Ontario County would be handling per year.
right.
And I'm not even sure if it was Ontario County. It was a small
Yeah.
county. It wasn't big as ours.
Right, certainly something to look at. We know we're gonna get questions about that as the
Right.
technology evolves.
Okay.
Right.
Considering the volume of calls that we handle.
Yes.
Not only is it the technology piece, but it's also having the staffing to be able to do that. Because
Yeah,
nationally, take up your time now, but nationally, being able to fully staff an emergency communications center has been extremely challenging.
Yeah.
So, but we can give you an update as far as how we might be looking at that for the
Okay,
future.
great.
Great.
Anyone else have any questions? I know everyone's been through it a few times, so they're not.
What's going on with our zoo? I mean, there's a big project happening there, and I know we're gonna do a huge aquarium and we're gonna do a whole lot of stuff there. I just wonder where all that is too.
So, yeah, bids came back on the project we designed last year, significantly over budget, so we're in the process of going through a redesign for that right
Okay.
now.
All right.
The point where Pat mentioned a tank upgrade,
Yep.
that
Yeah.
tank upgrade is for the aquarium that, 5-10 years out, we need to be able to replace things, and we're accommodating that in the current CIP.
Gotcha.
So no new.
Exciting stuff.
I apologize for stepping out. I had to take.
Oh, no, you're good.
But if anything comes to mind between now and next week, we can also
Right.
work quickly to get a department ready if there's. We've used the CIP in terms there's something else.
All right, so right now it's public safety for tower info and 911 update, right?
If there are more than, if I may request, if there's more than one department presenting, could we go first? Because we have an assignment to get to it about 4:30.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Thank you.
great. All right, next item is to set the public hearing on the proposed 2025 through 2030 CIP for March 14th, 2024 at 3 p.m., which is our next planning board meeting. And it's pursuant to legal notice, and this is, I have a copy here. I can read it if somebody wants. I need a motion for posting this legal notice here. And,
So moved.
Thank you, Robert.
Second.
Thank you, David. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? The public hearing is set. Any other business?
Mr. Chairman, I have an answer for the number of hours on R3. I was able to get that from the chief.
Yeah.
So we're just about 4,800 hours on the vehicle right now.
48,
4,800, yes.
3,800.
thank you.
Good. Thank you for that. So our next two meetings are March 14th and March 21st at After that, I need a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Robert, any seconds?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
You too, Bill.
Everyone.